One of the things that got us most excited about the very idea of doing a futuristic Batman show was the ability to design Gotham like all over again.
Gotham City has grown up in steel and glass, and in a sense has lost its humanity.
In many ways, it's more technological, yet it's also more dangerous than the original Gotham City.
When trying to develop this Gotham City, we sort of looked at urban trends and what was going on, the fact that cultures were coming together and mashing up. Capitalism was becoming international and sort of mega capitalism, and there's this sort of concentration of power among the few.
I can't say that we looked at future shock books. It wasn't a big study, it was just our basic feelings.
We're just kind of throwing around ideas about, well, what do we want it to look like? We don't want it to look like Flash Gordon. We don't want it to look retro. We don't want it to look like Blade Runner. Inevitably, you still kind of end up with some of those Sid Mead kind of design elements, kind of the sleekness and the, the kind of weird, industrial kind of shapes. But we were also looking at things like, anime.
Something along the lines of a Neo-Tokyo, but we didn't want to get it too detailed and overly complicated looking.
We wanted to create this sort of sense that the city has grown not only in size, but in scope and in a population.
There's some Asian or Chinese caricature kanji in the advertising just to show a little bit more of the globalization of Gotham.
It seemed that they were more progressive in Asia than we were here at the time, and so they were coming up with all these new gadgets and things. So we naturally kind of pulled that into the look of the show.
To a great degree, things stayed the same because, as we get into the 21st century, we realize we don't have jetpacks, we don't have flying cars.
So we figured, okay, very few people would actually have flying cars in the future. The technology exists, but it's very, very expensive. So probably only the very, very rich would have flying cars. Setting the show 50 years in the future, we knew that realistically the city would probably not change drastically that much.
We tried to put the old against the new, and then the new rough it up a little bit, because it's still Gotham. And even if you bring in terrific-looking architectural structure, it's still going to rot into, what Gotham is.
We definitely wanted it to feel perpetually nighttime.
We had done the red skies on the old Batman show. Metropolis had blue skies. So our definition for New Gotham is going to be purple skies.
And then daytime had this burnt orange look. So it never was quite fully daytime. And I think it went a long way to help with that sense of helplessness and desolation.
So you imagine the future realistically and then just make it dark and crime-ridden. And I think that was our vision for New Gotham.
The Gotham we wanted to do was more elevated. It was still dark. It still was dingy. It wasn't inviting.
In the old Batman, it always seemed like Batman was in charge of the city, whereas this Batman was kind of overwhelmed by the city and its scale and how impossibly big everything was around it.
In building the city up, and these buildings are like city blocks, huge, in order to get up, we need to get a lot of transportation. Lots of people have to be able to get up.
The streets wouldn't necessarily just be horizontal, they would be vertical. So this gave, Glenn Murakami, my art director on the show, he came up with this really weird idea of like these vertical subways. The city is so tall that you actually have to take a subway car to get to the top.
Buildings not only are vertical, but they're slanted. When you're panning across it, it gives more motion and more movement.
We just wanted a scale, lots and lots of scale, so that everyone felt like they were tiny compared to the landscape they were against. One of the things that I found very interesting about this new Gotham City was the fact that the society within it was so stratified.
Gotham is more of a melting pot, except in that one area of the rich and poor, where there are a whole bunch of poor people and a lot of really, really wealthy people right at the top.
We tried to create that dichotomy that the rich live kind of in the towers, that they've gone up toward the sky, and then on the street level is really kind of the lower depths. That's where everybody else kind of struggles and lives and works. We see that concentration of capitalism and the sort of destructive effects it has on society today, and we were sort of projecting into that. Criminals, migrate north as well, but you've got the tops and you've got the bottom, and then you've got Batman who tries to keep peace everywhere.
Overall, it's a futuristic environment with larger empty spaces and a multi-tiered city. That was fun to play in.
This new Gotham gave us a sense of height and scale where Batman was never truly on the ground. He was always in the air. He was always hovering over things.
This Batman got to go around in a city that was designed to fly through.
The thing that we always try to do in all of our shows is we always say, okay, we don't necessarily have to be realistic, we just have to be convincing. You always had to find that line between not too futuristic, you want to keep it believable, but still fun.
If you look at the history of Batman, he's always been the first to embrace every new technological advance. I mean, he has to. He's not Superman.
The suit allows him to do things he couldn't do without it, but, you know, without it, he's still Batman.
To put him in the future, he had to be more high-tech.
We wanted it to look in such a way that, you know, within a half a second of looking at it, that you would immediately go, oh, okay, that's Batman.
The idea was to build upon the old one. What was sort of sleek, dark, and scary, black cape, black mask, ears, things like that had to sort of remain.
We didn't want him to look just like Bruce Wayne with a bunch of junk on him. We wanted to have his overall silhouette be completely different than the classic Batman.
He didn't have a cape. We didn't want to do that.
As technology advances, everything's all about miniaturization and making things smaller and more powerful, but still small. So I figured, hey, Bruce Wayne's smart enough, and the technology is probably going to exist to make all that stuff really, really compact, so I can still keep his silhouette very, very sleek.
The idea was to make him even more frightening, less man and more bat.
Early on, came up with the idea of putting him like pretty much head to toe in black with red accents.
The red bat on his chest, really violent contrast with the darkness of his costume.
So there was almost this sense of blood on his chest, which kind of gave him a frightening vampire-like image.
It's very Dracula, which has always been a part of the Batman mystique to me.
Now, where is ink?
I don't know.
Wrong answer.
Terry's just a punk kid in a suit, so the suit has to do a lot more work for him than the original Batman suit had to do. So the suit had to scare you right off the bat.
We wanted to keep Terry very lean to make him seem like a teenager. We didn't want to make him look like a big, you know, bodybuilder.
The old Batman was all about stillness and then bursts of energy, whereas this Batman, the minute you saw him, he was leaping at you.
By keeping all the lines very, very sleek without a lot of bumps and bulges, it was a lot easier to accomplish that.
The new Batsuit was really cool. We tried to put as much technology into it as possible.
It's controlled by the mind, and so batarangs, instead of having to pull them out, they just pop up within the suit.
It enhances the strength quite a bit. It sends readouts directly, you know, into the mask. There's an uplink with the Batmobile and also the Bat computer.
The whole suit wasn't conceived all at once. As episodes were being written, capabilities were thought of.
One of the major things that the suit provided for us that the old Batman show never had was that he could fly in short bursts.
His flying capabilities were going to have to be limited, sort of gliding and quick spurts and things like that. We didn't want to push it too far.
But given that many of Terry's enemies could fly, it just sort of evened things up a little bit.
This automatically made him different from Batman, who kept using his grappling hooks and gouging the buildings of Gotham City.
Having the technology now in the suit in the future, he could do things with his vision, seeing in the dark, magnification, and he also had things like out of his fingertips where he could actually hear things through glass because, you know, he needs to spy.
It really does allow Batman to be 200% more efficient than he was before.
Synaptic controls, neuromuscular amplification, flight capability. This thing might be old, but it's still cutting edge.
The tricky part about making the suit was that if it gets too suity, it's no longer Batman.
This is something that is really designed to be kind of a second skin and more of a full-body version of the utility belt than a war suit.
I don't think you have to worry about the suit making him all-powerful just because his villains were so incredibly powerful. He was always outgunned. He never won because the suit was better than the bad guy's suit.
There's always that temptation when you're doing a futuristic show to kind of predict where technology is going to go and how it's going to change society.
Things that we thought were going to be a long ways away are here right now. You know, we thought that the comlink was really futuristic stuff.
The way he would actually tap his ear, the sort of Bluetooth type cell phone thing, was actually not in existence at that time.
We didn't want, when he turned invisible, we wanted for the audience to still be able to see him. At the same time, we also figured, hey, that kind of makes sense. You know, if they ever do come up with some kind of invisibility gadget, it's still not going to be perfect. You're still going to probably see a hint of that person there.
They are now working on those things, where they're fabrics that bend light.
And some things that just, you know, they just seemed right. You know, the invisibility, the magnetized feet for hanging upside down like a bat, the flight capability, it all just sort of worked. This is not the Batman of today. This is the Batman just slightly into the future.
We didn't want to make him so overpowered that the suit defines what he is. He still has to have a personality within that suit.
That was something that we certainly wanted to keep all the way through to the end. It was about why he was a hero and why he was his own man. It really didn't have anything to do with the suit.
It's only the suit that's out of commission, not Batman.
The idea of making a teenage Batman was something that it took us a while to wrap our head around.
Taking a character that's iconic and has a huge history of great stories, having to wipe that clean and start over again and come up with something that's just as good is practically impossible.
We worried about this. We got to do this right, or we're going to be a laughingstock.
When I came up with the idea of Bruce handing the torch to the new generation and setting the show in the future, we started getting excited about it.
It was amazing. If somebody had told me the idea ahead of time, I would have said, oh, that can't work, teenage Batman. But I loved it.
It's not just an interpretation of something old, but a reinvention. The tough thing with coming up with a new Batman was, like, who is it going to be? You know, we didn't want to kill off Bruce Wayne, ever. He is Batman.
You can never really replace Bruce Wayne, and you never really want to.
We thought it would be fascinating if Bruce were still alive.
I don't think anybody would have watched the show if we just said, well, you know, Bruce is gone and here's the new guy.
When you're dealing with old Bruce Wayne, you're dealing with a guy who has given his whole life to his cause, and he hasn't seen the city get a whole lot better.
Once he lost the identity of Batman, he lost purpose. So this kid coming into his life regenerated that.
He had to teach this young upstart how to make judgments as to what is right and what is wrong.
It really made sense in sort of projecting this into the future to have him turn into the mentor. That made it so that we remained connected to all of that mythology from the old Batman show.
And then we started thinking, well, what's Terry like? You know, we don't want him to be literally just Bruce Jr.
The night is young, and so am I.
I'd think a good night's rest might be more beneficial.
Like you said, who sleeps anymore?
The idea was to go completely opposite from what Bruce Wayne had been.
He's smart, but he doesn't apply himself. He's good looking, and he's charming, and he's funny. And he's kind of coasting on that.
His parents are divorced, and that gives him an edge and a bit of a tragedy already.
And he's, you know, a little bit on the shady side of the law sometimes. He's just a kid who gets in trouble.
Unlike Bruce Wayne, who from the age of 9 started the controlled bit, you know. Well, as soon as his parents died, he became determined to become what he became.
In contrast, you've got Terry McGinnis, who had no money, was born into no wealth whatsoever.
He has 2 very middle-class type parents, and one of them gets killed, and how does that shape him into becoming Batman?
He can't just be a super clean, nice kid. He's got to have something that would make him put on the suit.
He would have to have an anger inside him, because Batman has an anger inside him.
Where's Dad?
Honey,
Dad?
He doesn't always have the right choices instinctually himself, but he learns from Bruce Wayne.
What that does is create a character that you can relate to. You know, we're not somebody who trained from childhood to be the perfect specimen.
They're totally different personalities, and I think that really lended itself to the energy of the show, because old Bruce did not get this kid, but he's got to work with him.
The most enjoyable part of writing for the show, for me, was that dynamic of the embittered old man and the kind of callow young man. where they met in the middle.
Ultimately, their goals are the same. It's just their backgrounds are so different. But that creates drama.
Something happened to you, didn't it? And it wasn't just that you got old.
The difference between Bruce's Batman and Terry's Batman is that he'd try to scare you into giving up first. And if you didn't, then he'd beat you up. Whereas Terry probably would, you know, throw a batarang at the back of your head first.
He comes at being Batman from a completely different place. There's all these great toys to play with. It's like, look at that Batmobile, that's sweet. You know, look at that suit that enhances my powers, gives me the ability to fly.
Bruce is more of a tactician, a warrior, someone who has studied all levels of fighting.
He was in control of himself. He's totally in control.
Terry's a brawler. He just gets in there and he goes on instinct alone.
His whole way of crime fighting is a lot more energetic and a lot more reckless.
Terry is much more impulsive and will take chances that maybe Bruce thinks are foolish.
They approach problems in different ways. Batman's trying to stop crime, and Terry is trying to make people's lives better.
When Bruce Wayne was Batman, he didn't really have a mentor figure to guide him. Terry actually has Bruce in his head all the time.
You get an interesting dynamic because you're actually able to be inside Batman's head and hear the contradictory information going on.
From now on, we're handling it my way, which means taking our time and getting it right.
Like a lot of kids who rebel against their parents, you know, he wants to do things his own way as well. He needs to learn. Having that voice in his head works against him because he likes to fight against it sometimes.
On the other hand, Terry brings something new to the equation. He's very good with the technology, and he interacts with the suit in an almost instinctive way, whereas Bruce was not native to the digital world.
So there's a lot to be learned on both sides. Bruce Wayne had to learn a lot about what this kid is dealing with and what he could demand of this kid, and vice versa. Terry had to learn where Bruce Wayne was coming from.
Whereas Bruce declared war not just on the guy who killed his parents, but all of crime, Terry kind of wants to do that. But once his dad's killers are brought to justice, it's kind of like, okay, I'm kind of done. But hey, there's all this other stuff to play with. And I think gradually he's learning to be a little bit more altruistic in his motives.
Sometimes I ask myself, is Batman just the suit or is he the man inside? Time to find out.
Terry still has a family around, and that helps keep him grounded and helps keep him connected to the rest of society.
These are all things Bruce has denied himself in his quest to become Batman.
Terry figures out how to be a person and still be an effective Batman, which is something that Bruce never figured out.
To me, he's not as driven as Bruce was. He's a little saner.
A lot of the reason Terry was doing it was because he'd found a new father figure. He became Batman for Bruce.
It's a good match. It's never an easy match because from the get-go, Bruce hates him. I don't want to be Batman again. I don't even want to think about that. But Terry is kind of like his youthful side who comes to him and says, it's time to answer the call again, old man.
Bruce, Tim, and I have worked together for a long time, and we don't have many differences. But one of the differences we have is that he had it in his head that maybe Bruce somehow should have fathered Terry McGinnis. And I never thought that.
That was an idea that we had played with back at the time when we were doing Batman Beyond.
What if the big shocking reveal was that Terry was Bruce Wayne's biological son through some kind of weird cloning experiment?
It never really progressed beyond a few discussions we had.
Finally, at the end of the Justice League, he actually figured this out, and they told that story.
That's very controversial to this day. There are still people who think it's really, really cool, some people who are indifferent to it, and other people who just think it's just a travesty.
I sort of came down on the side that no, they really didn't have anything to do with each other. They were linked more by temperament and by a sense of justice.
I was kind of on the fence about it, actually. I was perfectly happy with him being his own person, which I still think he is.
Depending on who you talk to on the old show, some of them agreed with that, some of them didn't. I think it's pretty clear which side Bruce was on.
We knew it would be controversial, that people would say, it makes Terry, you know, kind of a victim of fate, and that he was just Bruce Wayne Jr., which we deliberately set out not to do.
Where do you think you're going?
It seemed to me like it was intentional from the beginning. I always wondered why the McGinnises had a kid with black hair and blue eyes.
It's almost like subliminally we were laying the seeds for what we were going to do later. Partly it is kind of fate that Terry was destined to become Batman, and it's a set of weird coincidences. But at the same time, he still is his own man. It's our way of saying that, you know, biology only goes so far.
Batman's not about DNA. It's about the individual. If you can get that kind of willpower, if you can go the limit and then push yourself beyond the limit, you have what it takes right there to be a Dark Knight.
It kind of brought it full circle, because I think we sensed that Justice League Unlimited was going to be our last chance to tell some of these stories.
Starting with Batman, through Superman, Batman Beyond, and Justice League, we literally thought that was going to be our last episode. We thought that would be kind of a nice way to kind of dovetail it all the way back to the very first episode of Batman.
Batman goes on. Bruce Wayne may be gone, the show may be gone, but there'll always be a Batman.
When I saw how elegantly they had done it by bringing in all those elements from Batman Beyond and the Batman animated series and Mask of the Phantasm, I was going like, yes, this is the way it should end.
The core relationship between Bruce and Terry in the show was always really interesting to me. It was a chance to sort of tie that relationship off and see Bruce have a happy ending.
His whole reason for being Batman started with the loss of family, and now he can stop being Batman because he's regained family.
Tonight, for your viewing pleasure, we have Mr. Alan Burnett, everybody's favorite uncle, the ever-huggable Bruce Timm, my arch-nemesis Glenn Murakami, and retired billionaire playboy Paul Dini. I'm Jason Hillhouse, and welcome to Inside Batman Beyond. Tonight, we're going to discuss Season 1. Let's start at the beginning. Batman Beyond is more of an original idea.
Semi.
Then, well, Batman and Superman and stuff kind of established things. So where did the idea come from? Where did we start?
The idea came out of the office of Jamie Kellner, who was the head of programming at the WB network. He had a meeting with us, and he started off by being very complimentary to the current Batman show that we were doing. This was the New Adventures of Batman. And he said, yeah, we really, really like the show. You guys are doing a great job on it. It skews a little old. And he said, so we'd really like to retrofit, Batman so that we could get a little bit more of the kid demographic to watch the show, make sure that the kids watch the show. And we said, oh, we're thinking, okay, does that mean we have to give him a sidekick, or we already had 2 sidekicks. We didn't know where he was going with this, and all of a sudden we started to realize that he was talking about not just kind of revamping the show, he was talking about doing a completely new show. And then the words Teenage Batman came out of his mouth, and we all kind of went, whoa. So we were all kind of sitting there kind of stunned, as you might imagine, and he said, so do you guys have any ideas of what you could do with this? And just kind of off the top of our heads, we just started just coming up with the concept of Batman Beyond, right there on the spot without any thought. And he went, great, that sounds like a show to me. I said, so I guess we'll do some development on this and get back to you in a week or so. He says, no, you guys have a green light. Go make the show. So we walked out of there just shell-shocked. And we met out in the parking lot and kind of went, what do we do? This is really bizarre. It's we love the show that we're doing. We love the classic Batman. I'm not sure we want to do this teenage Batman show. And Paul and I called each other over the weekend 3 or 4 times, just so what do you think? Is this crazy or what? It's I'm not really sure I want to do it.
I think I'm going to quit.
Yeah, we said that several times,
Yeah.
And then Monday morning I went into the office and I met with Glenn and I told Glenn the whole thing.
He went, come here, come to my office. And then we went into your office and he said, close the door. He told me all the ideas, and then he pitched me the Batman Beyond idea, and he's like, what do you think of it? And I was like, let's do it. That sounds cool. That sounds cool. When do we start?
So Glenn kind of talked me into it. I mean, his enthusiasm for it kind of immediately turned me around, and it's Glenn was on board with it because I knew he was going to take the lion's share of the design work because he was our art director. I figured if he was game, we'd give it a shot. And then the more we started talking about it and developing it and actually, talking about the different dynamic of the character, we actually started really liking the idea. And then by the time, we were, knee deep in it, we loved the show, so.
Alan and I started talking about ideas, and we realized, yeah, there is something here, especially if we can make it a continuation of the show we've been doing. Let's skip ahead 40 to 50 years and see what Bruce Wayne's life is like. And that became kind of fascinating from a writer's point of view, because we were able to use the seeds we had planted in the original series and see how Bruce's life had progressed. Had he cleaned up crime in Gotham City? Not really. What had his struggle against crime brought him? He was a lonely old man living in a giant mausoleum with a dog as his only companion. So it's sad that that's what his vision brought him to. But you bring in this new character, Terry McGinnis, and suddenly that is like a shot of life for this guy. And that makes him seem like a heroic and a noble character, that Terry is able to bring him out as a hero again.
Do you remember the original title?
I may have said that.
Remember
the
the working title for a little while? We had to find something else. We knew we did, but
Batman Tomorrow, right?
Yeah. No. Well, even before that.
What?
We were calling it the Tomorrow Night.
Oh, the Tomorrow Night. Right.
Thank God. We did.
Well, what were some of the you said Batman Tomorrow.
Batman Tomorrow, Tomorrow Night, B2.
I don't remember
Was
that.
it like with a little squared B squared kind of thing?
I don't even know.
It was Batman Tomorrow for a long time.
Right.
It was on all my, I think, development artwork. Yeah, I wrote Batman Tomorrow on it. So.
And then somebody eventually realized, you know what? That's going to be really hard to do promotional interstitials tomorrow on Batman Tomorrow. I mean, tonight on
yeah.
Batman Beyond's a better title anyway.
Yeah, it was a great title.
Whose idea was that?
I think that was mine.
I think it was me.
Yes, take it.
I remember there were four titles that were in contention in the end.
Maybe it was both of ours.
It could be. All I remember is that we
I'll
all
let you have that one.
We all gravitated to that one.
Arm wrestle. Winner gets it.
I just have a feeling that was mine. I don't know why.
This really was kind of committing to saying this is a real continuity.
This is a definite continuity commitment, because once you show Bruce Wayne, in his 80s, anytime you go back and show him again in his younger days, you kind of know, where it's going. So
Bruce said, like, well, it won't wreck what we've already started. It wasn't going to conflict with the continuity we already started.
It felt like a good natural continuation of it. It didn't seem all that contrived. It didn't seem forced and contrived. It felt, it felt good. But Jamie really liked the old Bruce Wayne idea.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
In fact, he liked the first design of Bruce Wayne that I did, where he looked really old.
Boris Karloff.
Yeah,
design.
the Boris Karloff Uncle Creepy thing. I mean, he really liked that.
He had like a blind eye.
Yeah, he had like a blind eye. He was almost bald.
Hair.
And he was a mess. And Jamie really liked that. And I remember afterwards we had a meeting, we had kind of a summit meeting where somebody mentioned the possibility of killing off Bruce Wayne, and that's when I slammed my fist on the table and said, I will never kill off Bruce Wayne.
It had to have been liberating to kind of have some of the contemporary shackles kind of lifted, like literally now you can do anything.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we didn't want to make it so futuristic that it was unrelatable. We didn't want it to look like Star Wars or Flash Gordon. We didn't want people to have transporters and, jets and stuff. Even the fashions, we just said, okay, what's fashion going to look like 50 years from now? Who knows? But it's probably not going to be that different than what people are wearing now. They're still going to be wearing shirts. They're still going to be wearing pants and shoes, but they'll just be some kind of different cut. The biggest fashion statement we made was getting rid of lapels. Nobody's suit has lapels on them.
Lapels are out in 50 years.
Lapels are,
you heard it here first.
But,
well, when you draw guys in like double-breasted suits for like how many seasons?
Yeah.
It's like, I want to draw something new. So that's,
lapels out.
That was probably a reaction to that.
Yeah.
So it's a real subtle kind of futuristic.
Well, 50 years isn't that far.
It's not that
really,
far.
It's not like,
it needed to be futuristic and still be Batman, too.
Right.
That was the other thing. So
how did you not fall into the trap of just, okay, everybody updated? Here's the Riddler in 50 years. You guys created a lot of new characters and a lot of new villains.
We wanted to avoid that easy trap of just having, Poison Ivy Beyond and Two-Face Beyond. And, I mean, we wanted to have all new villains. And, I mean, we did, Bane showed up, but he was really old and kind of sitting in a wheelchair.
Also.
And Mr. Freeze, we couldn't resist because we love Mr. Freeze. But other than that, it was just kind of like, nope, let's not do the Joker and let's not do all that other stuff, because it was just...
I think in the beginning we did have like, kind of a Riddler type and a Clayface type, but I think we just said, no, don't do that, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
When we started Batman a decade and a half ago, that turned out to be a 6 to 14-year-old show. And we never quite shook off the 14-year-olds in our as we kept going through. Even on
It's
the way
hard.
back. It's very hard.
Well, when you deal with a character that has a long history in comics and movies and television, he's going to have fans at, you know, of all age groups. And I think even if you're doing a show ostensibly for kids, and you're doing the show well and you're engaging the audience, other people are going to watch simply because they know the character from, you know, their own childhood and they want to catch up with it. I mean,
we try not to make the show, you know, so extremely gory or extremely dark that kids aren't going to be interested in it and parents are going to freak out about it. But when we make the shows, we're kind of writing the shows that we would have liked to have seen when we were, you know, 10.
Well, yeah.
You know, it's like literally when I was a kid, I would have died to watch a show like Batman Beyond. That would have been like, you know, heaven.
There's a villain that came from my 10-year-old brain.
What?
There's a show, we did a show called Untouchable, was that it?
Untouchable.
Untouchable, about a guy who had this repeller suit.
Right.
That's from a 10-year-old brain.
Which character is that?
We never named him. We never named him in the thing.
Wait, cut to picture of him now.
Yeah.
That's what he looked like. Yeah, that's a cool design. It looked really great.
So we just try to make the best show that we can, and we're, you know, we're all geeks and we're all kind of kids at heart still, so, you know, we figure if we like the show, the kids are going to like it too.
I would say that it's been a successful start, and I thank you for your time this evening.
Certainly.
We'll talk to you later. Enjoy. Go watch the shows. See ya. Hi, and welcome to another edition of Inside Batman Beyond. I'm Jason Hillhouse. I am here tonight with Bruce Timm, producer, Alan Burnett, producer, Glenn Murakami, producer, Paul Dini, producer. Glenn Murakami was a producer on this show, your first producing gig. King of the world, Murakami is. We're here to talk about Season 2, bigger order this time than the first 13. We kind of set everything up. You created the world and everything in the first 13. And now...
They just said make some more till we tell you to stop.
Just keep making them.
Yeah.
Which means that everybody apparently was happy with the first 13.
It was an immediate hit, and a lot of people who had been skeptical about the show were surprised by how good the show was.
Sometimes I ask myself, is Batman just a suit, or is he the man inside? Time to find out.
The show was a hit, and they wanted more. And after the challenges of creating all these characters and setting up the scenario, how do you continue and go on with another 26?
Right off the bat, they actually wanted us to add a strong female to the supporting cast, a young teenage girl who hopefully would be in on Terry's secret, somebody he could talk to and share his adventures with.
At least now you're not alone with your secret. You have someone to talk to, someone who can help you out sometimes if you need it.
I thought she was kind of an interesting character, and you know, Cree Summer, who played her voice, you know, we adore her. So we went whole hog with it, and she was in a lot of the episodes.
I do remember hearing, well, is she going to know Bruce's secret too? Where does she fit in? Here was somebody totally new. She was not Batgirl. She was not Robin, or even Alfred for that matter. She was just somebody who was a friend of Terry's and who was let in on the secret.
You call me Robin, and I'm out of here.
No problem. Alfred.
Alfred?
I thought Max would kind of represent the future or things that Bruce didn't know more, and that's how she would be a stronger ally to Terry.
A little more hip to the times and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you know, Bruce would still school them in the end. You know, it's like, I've been around longer, I have more experience, so this is what, you know, that's what I thought.
You should have said that then.
I did.
And had you gotten into the pit,
I was the new guy.
We disappointed you all the time. It sounds like every time we talk about this.
A big disappointment. Right.
See, what's interesting is we'll talk about certain ideas, and then we end up not doing them, and I never know why. I didn't spend that much time on your side of the building,
well, that's
so I would
why.
always. But see, I wasn't included in on those. This is what the network wants.
You were the new guy, the new producer.
Yeah,
you
I
didn't
was.
Get shut up.
I did. I think start a lot of trouble because I didn't know those things. So, sorry.
And sometimes
you want to see those ideas executed, you got to get in the story meetings with the writers and stuff. So
I didn't get in the pit.
Yeah.
You didn't get in the pit.
Yeah. So you learned your lesson, though, didn't you? Now you just run the show.
I would.
I'm not listening to anybody here.
Yeah, but that would happen every once in a while. We'd have a great, you know, design or an idea, and then we start, you know, working out the story, and then the story takes a, you know,
it
left
goes a
turn
different way.
someplace.
Sure.
I've seen it all. Demons, witch boys, immortals, zombies. But this thing, I don't know, it just feels so high school.
This was the season where we were also, because we brought in this girl character, they wanted us to move to the high school. They wanted less
high school stories.
Yes, right. Less corporate stories, more high school stories.
We were fine with that too, because we were actually tired of the whole corporate thing.
Yeah,
we felt we'd done the powers thing enough. And you know, Terry was a teenager, and we kept saying, well, the early stories felt just kind of like regular Batman stories. They didn't seem specifically Terry stories, and it's like Terry was a completely different kind of character than Bruce Wayne was.
Like Glenn said, you don't want to do too many corporate stories, you don't want to do too many villain, rumbles, but, every once in a while you throw in something like the Egg Baby story or something, like...
We like the Egg Baby
story. That's fun, but
also... even that's got supervillains in it. I mean, they're not supervillains, but they're villains.
Yeah. You have to have
You always have to have villains.
Opponent, yeah.
Well, see, that's the tricky thing. But, by setting the stories more in the high school, we thought that, well, if the gym teacher is a supervillain and the school psychologist is a supervillain, and suddenly everybody, the entire staff is a supervillain.
The kids are
They're all supervillains, It's like, it really started straining credibility.
Change schools, man.
So we were a little bit leery of that, and we did have a bunch of stories like that where a lot of the teachers turned into supervillains, and it's like, okay, so it was tricky.
And we also, the other thing is we could just center a story around a kid.
Which we did that too.
Which we did, not
like
necessarily.
the good kid who turns out to be leader of the Joker's gang, something like that.
Something like
right.
that, yeah.
Right.
So.
Or the Willy Watt character who,
Yeah.
So.
Joker with a Z.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hipping it up.
Jokers.
It's
fresh, baby.
Keeping it real.
And almost every teenager that we had as a recurring character had a place in that
Howard group.
I guess I'll be seeing you ladies at my Shui party this Friday. Super.
Looks kind of familiar.
Based on me. Yeah, that was a fun episode. Howard Groot.
Who named him?
Me.
Groot?
I don't know.
You see yourself as a Groot?
I don't know. What's a Groot?
I don't know. That's what I think.
Cross between Gru and a Root. I don't know. I don't know. It's I just came up with a name. He was like a schlubby character, so I said Howard Groot. That sounds like
that sounds like it's a perfect name for the. I mean, you look at the guy on the show, and it's a perfect name.
Yeah.
Something just fits him.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
You look in the mirror and go, Howard Groot. All right, that'll be the one.
Terry, today was beach day. Remember? Where were you? Oh, just out saving the world, Ma.
Season 1, you have to establish kind of the foundation of what it's going to be. And Season 2 seems to be where you were spreading your wings a little bit. Specific episodes that stand out.
Earth Mover.
There it was, Earth Mover, yeah.
So we have a difference of opinion on this.
All right.
Okay.
Pros and cons.
When you said a few moments ago, off camera, that it was one of your favorite episodes. That just surprised me.
Why?
Because that was the most difficult episode. It was one of those stories where you got into it and you could not find a good ending. You couldn't get out of that story. It was really a horror story all the way to the end. And I thought, this is as far as we can ever go on the show, as far as tone goes.
And dark, yeah.
Dark. I mean, it was a really dark story.
It's very dark. And there's no...
We went dark.
Well, that's what I like about that show.
I know,
I like the ambiguity of it. I like the fact that the guy who's supposed to be the bad guy isn't really all that bad. And the monster, he's only technically the monster. Even he's kind of sympathetic. I like the fact that there's no clear-cut good guys and bad guys in that story. That's what I really like. It would have been really typical to make the guy who talked the dad down into the hole, to paint him just as a complete bad guy. But he's, he made a mistake and his friend got killed, but he's trying to do the right thing by raising the daughter and everything, and he's doing it really out of a sense of guilt and duty. And to me, that kind of redeems him as a character. So you're kind of like, it's hard to hate that guy. You kind of sympathize with him.
You want to kill me? Go ahead. I've got a lot to answer for, but for God's sakes, let Jackie go. She stays, and you die.
There's a father who's trapped in the ground, like a living corpse, and there's no way to free him. And there was just no way to get out of that.
That's cool.
Well, it's
It
cool.
is cool. It's way cool.
Yeah.
It was pretty horrific.
Yeah, it's all-time horror comics.
Maybe once in a while we can do one of those, but
Well, no, we didn't make a habit of it.
But that to me was.
Would you say that's as dark as it went? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes,
Way
that's
darker.
no.
We got darker than that.
No,
We got way darker than that.
There's-
Out of the Past is
Out of
a
the
way
Past
sicker
is
story
pitch
than,
black.
than
No, but it has a happy ending.
Oh, everybody blows up.
Yeah,
everybody dies.
The other story had no happy ending.
Well,
There
that's
was
true.
no-
Well, that's true. It's
there was-
bleak.
Well, maybe we should have just killed the guy at the end.
We did kill him.
It was dead.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
He got blowed up.
He was already dead.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
What did you want
saw
the
his little
ending to
bone
be?
hanging from the wall.
There was no way out of it.
yeah.
I suddenly realized if I had time, I would have started all over again.
No way. It's a great story.
I would have started all over.
How many of these meetings that apparently Glenn wasn't allowed to go to did you guys? I mean, everybody's really passionate about.
No, not very often. We were usually all on the same
I'm not
page.
looking for everybody punching each other in the face or anything. But I mean, as things went like that, I mean, part of the creative process was that like part of kind of you guys what fueled those kind of things, those kind of discussions and things like that.
Like I said, not usually. I mean, for the most part, we were mostly on the same page.
I stirred it up from time to time.
Occasionally, and occasionally.
when they allowed you in,
I got taken aside and told that I suffered from first-time producer syndrome. Bruce took me aside and it's like, you can't start trouble like that.
I like it.
If you want out of the cave, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way.
You're kidding.
None of the Robins ever complained.
A lot of stuff changed, between conceptual stage and the script phase, and some of that was due to the writing, and some of that was due to, when you get into the heart of it, you realize the story's taking a different turn, and you may not like where it's going. And sometimes we would come up with ideas, and the writers would take those. The other writers would take those and turn them into something else. I remember a robot story about a robot who was a thief who kept stealing things because it wanted to feel the same feelings. By taking this, I should be experiencing, the delight that a human has in this. And I really liked that idea, but I just, couldn't do anything with it at the time, so I gave it to Bob Goodman, and he looked at it and he goes, I can't make anything out of this. So he changed it and worked it around. That eventually came to the Zeta episode and from the Zeta series. And when I read his idea, I was going like, well, this isn't what I had in mind, but if it works, then,
You got a 2-season series out of it.
Yeah, so what did I know?
There you go.
She swore that it wasn't what it looked like. She meant it. I could tell.
To be young again and gullible.
As you're coming up with this stuff, and especially brand new things that you don't have some kind of source material to go back from, what kind of inspiration? I mean, you're talking about like you just watch all kinds of movies, read all kinds of comics, and I know everybody rushes out and buys a bunch of Jack Kirby and that kind of thing. Is it?
Well, a lot of our younger guys have never even heard of Jack Kirby, and it's weird because that's how old we're getting. That's how long in the tooth we're getting. And we're getting these new guys who go, Jack Kirby, who's that? So we force feed them like a steady diet of Jack Kirby comics. Say, look at this, and they go, oh. So
that's really sad.
It's frightening.
But it's a good education tool. I mean, you've got to, it prompts creativity to look back on some other things.
Yeah, but the fact that they don't know who
Well,
Jack
yeah,
Kirby
that is-
is.
It's just sad for us.
That's
That means
tragic.
that we're old. That's all. It's just.
But you get to show them.
Yeah. No, it's cool to see them discover it.
Thanks.
For what?
For reminding me why I got into this. It's been so many years now.
But you never really forget, do you?
No, you don't.
Well, any final thoughts on season 2 before we sign off?
It was the happiest time of my life.
It was all, nobody fought, it was all handshakes and rainbows. Other than the zombie script, everything else was great, all season long. Thanks a lot, folks. We'll see you soon. Enjoy the shows.
Was it Curse of the Cobra or The Curse of Cobra? Because I think it's
They had
actually,
two
I think one episode is titled The Curse, and the other one is
Curse,
Curse of the. It's
Yeah.
we couldn't get this episode straight at all.
Yeah.
It's
It
a
changed
mess.
titles several times, I think.
It did, so we ended up using both.
But,
yeah, it's confusing. Yeah, part 1 is actually pretty good. I think I was always kind of happy with the way the show came out. Unfortunately, it's a really good setup to a not very good payoff. I think part 2 is just, for one reason or another, it probably sounded good on paper, but it's in the final analysis. Turning people into dinosaurs is just not that cool. It's just kind of dumb.
Yeah, the first part was more about Terry. It was more about Terry. It was one of the few shows that was really about Terry and his friendship with this,
Kind of
this
oddball
other
kid.
Yeah. And the parallels, and it's like how Terry's similar to this kid, but ultimately different because the kid turns another way. Well,
and Xander's actually like kind of romancing Max throughout part 1 too, isn't he? Or is that all in part 2?
A little bit. He basically kidnaps her.
Right,
I think.
yeah. He stalks her
But,
and kidnaps her, yeah.
But the genuine stuff between him and Xander was really nice. I mean, it was really, and it was the episode was paced very slowly, and it was different from a lot of our other episodes.
And it's got a continuity tie-in too to Batman.
Yeah.
Kyrie is actually a person that Bruce met in what was it, Day of the Samurai.
Yeah. So there's continuity.
Yeah, the trainer. Yeah,
that's right.
So it's a little continuity implant.
Who are you?
Kairi Tanaga. Years ago, Bruce and I studied together under the same sensei. Now I run this dojo.
But yeah, part one's nice. I mean, it's got good animation. I like I think all the action scenes are nicely staged and real fluid.
It was grounded in a weird realism that part 2 doesn't have at all. I mean,
yeah, part 2 just goes off into La La Land, and it's
and
real,
things just
it's a
start
really
happening
over
for no
the top
reason.
bonkers plot, and it's just you just can't.
Yeah,
really
it got
buy it
a
by the
little
end.
bit out of control there.
I just don't know, why would you turn yourself into a dinosaur?
I don't know. Well, especially and not like that, but it's like, okay, snakes are reptiles, dinosaurs are reptiles, but if you're a part of a snake cult, you don't really want to turn into a dinosaur. Yeah, it just seems.
Because they're bad guys. It doesn't. They just want to be the big bad guys.
You know, but we like dinosaurs and stuff. But but it's just.
But not only that, didn't they have an atomic bomb or something?
They were gonna drop an atomic bomb in a volcano and like
turn everyone into a dinosaur.
To make the no, it was to make the planet hotter.
Oh, okay.
They were basically going to create like instant global warming so that they could survive, and it's.
But see, the setup
silly.
for part 1 was that there's these two guys, they're friends, but they're going to go different ways, and there's going to be a showdown.
You know from the very beginning that he's being groomed to be the leader of this evil cult.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. But
and you think there's going to be a conflict between their friendship and him being evil and Terry being good, and none of that.
None of that pays off. Yeah, it's a shame. But
I'm just glad I didn't get part 2 to direct.
Oh, so you can bag on it because you didn't direct it?
Yeah. Because when I found out it was a 2-part, I was like, well, gee, I really think a director should direct both parts. And then I read part 2, and I was like, oh,
Dan Reba!
Dan! So
funny.
I always like doing things though that showed Terry, completely flawed, and it was kind of even Bruce looking at him and going, "No, you need to train up. It's not just the suit. You can't just have the suit and beat everybody. You got to learn." So we thought that was cool.
You raised an interesting point too, because that was one thing that we got criticism from a lot of fans online from the very beginning was, well, we never see him training. We never see Bruce training him to become Batman, and it's like, well, okay, yeah, but
Bruce was right. You've got the moves, kid, but you lack discipline. And you leave yourself open on the left side. Ow! We'll have to work on that.
The thing about Kobra is that, once again, it was a Jack Kirby kind of character. I don't even know why we wanted to use Kobra. I mean, I think there was kind of a neat idea in the comics, the idea of like this evil cult of people. And I like the idea that he's being groomed by the cult to be the leader, but he's even rebelling against the cult, even against like the doctor guy playing by Xander Berkeley.
Coincidentally.
I like the idea that he's like asserting himself, and like even the whole thing with Max is that that actually does humanize him as a villain. Even though he's becoming progressively more evil throughout the 2-parter. When he kidnaps Max, and the professor or the doctor saying, no, she's not suitable for you. And he's saying, I decide who's suitable for me. I like her because she talks back to me. I think he had the potential to be an interesting villain if only he didn't turn into a dinosaur at the end. Before we even started on this episode, we had heard that somebody was preparing to do a Batman musical. We just thought it was just amusing, and so we started riffing on it and said, "Oh yeah, we should do a Batman musical." And of course, we never did anything with it. And then I think you had already come up with the plot for Out of the Past, and we were talking about it in Alan's office, and we were somehow the idea of starting it with Batman the musical came up.
Yeah, we were thinking about. It's Bruce's birthday, and he's feeling his age, and Terry does something for Bruce that he thinks is kind of cool, and takes him for a night on the town. And so he, spends some money and gets some tickets to see the Legend of Batman show. And Bruce is just sitting there in abject disgust, and Terry's going like, "Hey, isn't it shway?"
Yeah.
Schwarbage.
Yeah. No, that was really fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Of course, Paul wrote all the lyrics. Superstitious, cowardly lot, plan and plot, and they always get caught.
A superstitious, cowardly lot. They plan and plot, but they always get caught. Their evil schemes all come to naught. A superstitious, cowardly lot.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it took me about 3 minutes.
And the thing was too is we knew that Kevin had a beautiful singing voice as well. So it's like, okay, well, he's got to sing. We got to have Kevin sing his own part.
We
and
got really
we
good guest stars.
The
to
guest stars
sing.
were amazing. I mean, his backup chorus is Adrian Barbeau, Charlie Kimbrough,
Beth Howland.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. So yeah, it was really, really fun.
And that's all they did was sing those parts. They didn't even do other voices.
No, yeah,
in the
Adrian
show.
doesn't actually speak in the show. She's just singing backup. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes, I sang 2 lines in that show as well. And
Did you?
I remember you guys saying like, "Oh yeah, and you've got to sing some stuff." I was like, "Guys, I can't sing."
Oh, yeah,
no,
when
that's
you come down to the
perfect.
key.
Oh
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be able to sing. It's like, oh, thank God, because I can't.
I loved looking at all the costume designs for all the villains.
I did all the costume designs.
Everything's there's a lot of fur. I noticed. Everyone's like, even Commissioner Gordon's got that big fur collar. And
Catwoman looks like she's out of Cats.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Bruce!
I heard him, Talia. Where's Raish?
I did not want you to find out this way, but I suppose what is done is done.
Detective.
No, see, now this is something that James and I can't quite remember, is who came up with the idea of having Raish in Talia's body? Because you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember telling you about it, I think, in the car once we were going out to lunch or something.
Right.
But yeah, okay. So that was always part of the initial idea.
Yeah, it's just a weird idea, like Talia's
It's
still
genius.
around.
I mean, it's my favorite. It's my favorite surprise twist in any of the episodes we've ever done. I mean, you totally don't see it coming.
Now we cut it, but you actually came up with a rationale or some sort of scientific. Remember, there was a line that said I had my vocal cords grafted.
Oh yeah.
There's a long explanation,
and it was just like, nah, forget it.
Yeah, they don't need to know
you
how.
can't rationalize.
I think
it,
that was a bit of Alan's logic. Like, how does he speak the same way? And it's like, I don't know. He just trained his voice. Like, he's talking high, I don't know.
No, you know what? It's you don't even have to rationalize it. It's just too cool. You'll just accept it, even though it's crazy. And then I remember James, you boarded like all that stuff at the end where Talia's fighting Terry and Bruce.
Yeah, that was fun.
Was that just on your own idea, or was that somebody else who gave you that idea to make all of her movements really, really girly? Because I think that's really cool. That it's like he's talking in David Warner's voice, but he's tossing his hair and he's wagging his hips and stuff when he's moving, and he's very, very girly.
He's a perfectionist. So.
Okay,
that was wonderful.
I mean, it doesn't make any logical sense. You think at that point he would start walking like a man, but
You're creeping me out. She kissed me.
There's all kinds of cool stuff in that show. I love seeing Bruce and Terry teaming up to actually go into battle together at the same time,
And hearing the Batman theme in there.
all rocked up. Yeah, no, that's a great moment. That's really, really cool.
I remember from an acting standpoint for this episode, this was the only episode where Kevin and I worked together where, for at least a part of the episode, he didn't have the gravelly voice. He was just
that's right.
back
Younger
to
Bruce.
a regular Bruce Wayne.
Wow. I always wondered what you were like at your peak. Now I have some idea.
Not quite at my peak, but certainly better than I've been capable of in years.
It was like I got to just kind of sit there and watch what he had done for years on the original Batman series. It was really cool.
The idea for this episode started with Paul, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Oh, well. I was just looking for something else to do, and we had flirted with the idea of Justice League for a long time. You were not hot on the idea, but
I knew how much work it was going to be.
Yes.
And it did turn out to be a lot of work, but it turned out to be a good show, too. How did we come up with the lineup for this show, for which characters were actually going to be in it? I mean, I know that there was some kind of problem we couldn't use Wonder Woman or something at that time, so that's why we substituted Big Barda for her.
She was also in the comic book at that time, and I
that's
think
right.
she was a bad addition.
Yeah. No, I like Barda.
Yeah, I thought
me, throwing any kind of nod to Kirby I can.
Sure. She again, a woman who's theoretically immortal. She's been around for a long time, strong and powerful. She, worked well in that role. Mm-hmm. And then we needed a Green Lantern, so I thought, well, as the ring gets passed down, time and time again, why not a kid Green Lantern?
Was that your idea to come up with a little Asian kid Green Lantern?
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I like him.
I think Warhawk is actually better than the Hawkman, so I don't know if that was Warhawk ever a comic? Or?
No. Again,
we created him for the show.
I wanted to do a Hawkman type character, then I thought, it's futuristic, so let's give him like metallic wings and a more, hard-edged look. So, Aqua Girl, that was easy. I just imagined what if Aquaman and Mira had a daughter at some point. Micron was a nod to the Atom. So they were all kind of archetypes of characters that had been before.
One of the things that kind of bugged me for a long time about the episode, and I've kind of gotten over it after all these years, but one of the things that bugged me about it was that before the Justice League concept came up, we had talked I think from day one about doing an episode with Superman in the Batman Beyond world, and we threw out a bunch of different ideas about what we should do with the Batman Beyond Superman crossover, the Superman Beyond crossover, and we never really came up with anything that just really sang immediately that was good enough that we could actually go forward with it and turn it into a show. So, you know, when I got the outline for The Call Part 1, first of all, I was reluctant to do the Justice League anyways, but B, I was also kind of miffed that it was just another story where, you know, Superman turned out to be the bad guy. And that was what the last episode of Superman was, you know, The Legacy. So it was kind of like, the last time we saw Superman, he was the bad guy, and he was brainwashed. And here we're kind of doing the same thing. So that kind of bugged me. But like I said, over the course of time now, I look back on it, it's all okay. But we definitely wanted to do something with Superman in that world.
I remember the very first thing when I got the script was just thinking how cool it was to, after all these years, get to actually say Superman and have him come up and you know, have a scene with somebody that, you know, it was very cool for me to you know, have Terry be brought into the Justice League. I thought that was kind of a great way to end the show.
Shall we cut through the chit-chat? I know it wasn't ink that brought you to Gotham.
I think it's time your protege joined the Justice League.
The Justice League?
It was one of those things where all the voices together, especially in the room, just seemed to work so well. And the second that anybody, Peter or Chris or anybody, opened their mouth, they just kind of were that character, which I thought was really neat.
My beak tells me this stinks.
I'm afraid Barda and Warhawk have a point. No offense.
As for why we used Chris and not Tim, I don't really know why we did that, because Tim Daly, as people know, played Superman for us. But I think we just felt that Chris, his voice has much more of a gravelly edge.
This isn't up for discussion. Like it or not, Batman stays.
I think it was just a natural idea to cast the guy who played his dad as him. So it's like when he got older, he kind of turned into his dad.
Yeah.
So I think it worked really well.
Yeah, me too. I remember the scene between the first time that Superman comes back into the Batcave and sees Bruce again sitting at the console, and I just remember Kevin and Chris together having that one scene, and I just thought that scene was brilliant, because I remember, I think his first line, he says, "How you holding up?" And Kevin says, "With a cane." It was just this perfect line and that deep booming voice, and I just thought that scene between the two of them, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, that the antagonism between the two characters only gets worse as time goes by.
Grumpy old Superman.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. I know we've kind of harped on this a lot in the commentaries as I've been watching them back. I go, yeah, we do say that a lot. But you know, the thing is, this show again was the first time we'd done a group superhero, you know, show of this scale, and some of the action sequences in this show are just really off the hook in terms of how big they are and how much you know, pencil mileage goes into them. It was something that was really new for us. I mean, it was just trying to balance an action scene with 5 different characters in motion all at the same time. It was really, really a struggle. And it turned out to be actually good practice for when we did do Justice League. We actually, when we started Justice League, we actually sat down with the call and the storyboard crew, and we watched the call, and we said, okay, this is an example of what not to do. Don't pan away from this scene to that scene just to show what everybody's doing all at the same time. Use a cut instead, because the pan will slow you down. No, seriously, it was a good trial run. But some of these action sequences, for the time, they were like some of the craziest stuff that we'd ever done. That whole sequence at the end when Metropolis is getting destroyed.
Yeah.
Adam Van Wyck was the storyboard artist for that.
Yeah.
That's just some of the craziest stuff that we'd ever done up until that point. And it still holds up. I mean, it's a real shocking, cool sequence.
More so the part 1 than part 2, though. I mean, most of part 2 takes place.
Yeah, part 2 is less spectacular, less spectacle.
More story-driven.
Yeah. But it's got, I mean, again, thanks to Adam Van Wyck, it's got that sequence where all the zillions of starfish attack Terry and stuff. I mean, that's a lot of pencil mileage right there. But yeah, it doesn't have quite the epic scope that part one does. But part 1's got all that great stuff with, like, the buildings blown up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the bit where Warhawk gets destroyed and his helmet smacks into the Batmobile window.
That was cool,
like
with the Batmobile
awesome.
window, yeah.
Even though his death is a total cheat. It totally doesn't work. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The whole episode doesn't really make sense if you look at it too closely. I mean, there's all kinds of logic flaws built into it, but it's just like, whatever, it's fun. Let it go.
It starts actually with the video image from the Batmobile's recorder of Superman shooting the laser at the
Right.
giant rocket.
That's
that
how we
kills
ended
Warhawk.
part 1.
No, that's how the first one. That's how it starts. He's showing the rest of the Justice
take
League.
your word for it. You
Yeah,
know it better than I do.
He's showing the rest of the Justice
Oh,
League. I
that's
can't
right.
believe
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
And Barda's the one who says, "I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I know less about your vehicle than I do
And
about you."
Warhawk comes
Wow.
in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he shows
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So he was
He
dead for
disobeyed me.
barely a
I
minute.
like that. Yeah, that's right. Wow, that's scary. I remember those
I
lines.
was going to say.
I remember those lines. That's really scary.
Boy.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm trying to see what's going on in the mind of this thing. I'm the only one who can do it.
Starro, yeah.
It was a throwback to that Lobo episode. It was, you know, all built around that little sideways joke in the collector's ship. You know, you see the Starro in a little tube.
It had nothing to do with the fact that Starro was the first Justice League villain in the comics? Or did you just realize that after the fact?
Kind of after
No, it was
the fact.
actually Superman cleans out the cage and Star just jumped on him at
Yeah.
that point, and that was it.
Okay.
Basically, that was the backstory, supposedly.
Yeah.
Something as dopey as that.
I do wish we'd changed that one line where she says, Aquagirl says, it's been on him for years. It's like, that's the part that drives me nuts. And then we actually flash back and it looks like he's wearing like the old Superman the Animated Series costume. It's like, wait a minute. Starro's been on Superman since Superman the Animated Series? It's like, oh,
right.
I thought it was
This
the,
is
no,
so
it's the same
wrong.
costume. It's
After Justice League.
I
You
thought it
after
was in the
Justice
black and
League.
white.
That's the way I'd
Yeah,
prefer to think about it.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of Starro being on Superman for like 20 years.
No.
You know, it's like, yeah, I assume he wore that costume up until like right before Batman Beyond began.
Yes. And then
So,
he
'cause
changed
that
it, and then he got the
that
suit.
bugs me.
Starro gets on him and says, hey, how about a new wardrobe? He goes, all right. And then about a week later, the episode
See,
happens.
I think he's in the black and white suit when
No.
Starro jumps on him.
No, he's wearing the red, yellow, and blue
Before
suit.
Batman-
You're wrong once.
You
For once,
sure?
you're wrong. I
Before
think
we
so.
were 50 years ahead.
Batman Beyond is 50 years after, our current continuity. That is my law.
No,
That is my rule. That Batman Beyond is always 50 years from now, whenever now is.
I still think he's in the black and white suit when he gets jumped on by
I don't think he is.
Well, we'll have to take a look.
We're gonna have to check that out.
Well, the real reason you did the black suit, it was easy to animate. It looked good when you animated it, most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you did it.
What, Superman's black
Yeah.
suit? I just wanted to have some cool threads.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, spruce them up a bit.
What's the top speed on this thing?
Mach 3.
Is that faster than a speeding bullet?
I remember when we did the music on this show, Chris did a really interesting thing where Superman's chasing Batman across the frozen tundra, and he's playing the Superman theme, but it's like really off-kilter and not necessarily evil, but it just sounds wrong. It just sounds weird, and it's all like in minor chords and stuff, and it's just really cool and creepy. And was it Adam Van Wyck's idea to have Superman flying upright at that point?
That was one of the first times we did that, yeah.
It's really cool.
It was really
it makes
cool.
him, because normally we're so used to seeing him flying horizontal, and there he's just standing straight up and just kind of like levitating, and it was like, wow, that's weird.
In a way, I felt really bad in retrospect about this episode, because when you were doing Justice League, I was thinking like, well, they'll probably work Starro in at some point, and I go, no, well, already did Starro, and we have to keep him away because there's a continuity problem. And
Yeah,
how do you
I
do
think
that?
Starro did come up in conversation several times while we were working on Justice League, but I was never a huge Starro fan anyway, so
No.
it's like I don't regret not getting to use him in Justice League. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, you need all 7 of those guys to fight, giant starfish.
Yeah.
Tonight on Inside Batman Beyond Season 3, 2 of the members of this panel are wearing new shirts. Who is it? You choose. I am Jason Hillhouse, and I am here with Bruce Timm, Alan Burnett, Glenn Murakami, Paul Dini, wearing his only shirt. We're here to discuss Season 3 of Batman Beyond. For this season, there were some standout episodes, and there's still, I understand, to this day, disagreements about some episodes that didn't quite make it.
Go ahead, talk about it.
I was trying to do this really, kind of moderatory, kind of set it up thing, but no, these guys are going to have it out. Hit it.
Well, Glenn and I had been talking about how it was kind of a shame that Terry's girlfriend, Dana, always kind of got the short end of the stick. Terry is always making a date with her and then having to break the date because he had to go out and do Batman stuff.
Where's Dana?
She got tired of waiting for you. Sounds like an old song, doesn't it?
And Glenn kind of came up with what I thought was a neat little story. And it was a little story, but I felt out of all the different, however many we were doing that season, we could afford to do one that was kind of offbeat.
Terry's always letting Dana down. And throughout the story, he's going to meet her, but then he has to go fight crime or do Batman stuff. But it's important that he gets on this date with her by the end of the episode. And I wanted him to succeed in the end. I didn't have much of a story, and I think the structure was weird, but that was the whole point of it. I mean, he just shows up at the date at the end. It wasn't a big Batman moment.
Anyhow, so Glenn pitched the idea to Alan, and Alan tried to make it work as a story. Glenn and I were in Japan, and Alan faxed the outline to this story to the hotel, and I'm reading it, and I'm going, oh, Glenn's not going to like this. And I get to the end, and not only does Terry not make the date with Dana, Dana gets so mad at him, she dumps him, and then Terry goes to Max, and he's pouring his heart out to Max, and they end up making out. And I was just like, I got furious.
That's not the same thing at all.
Not only was Glenn going to be mad, but I was furious, so I immediately called Alan back in the States from Japan, and I'm yelling and screaming at him, you can't do this. If you're not going to do this story the way Glenn was originally going to write it, then don't even do it.
I thought, after we had our phone call, I think I went into your office, Paul, and I think I said,
You came in dragging the paper next to you and going, Jeez, what does he want out of this? What does he want? I mean, I tried to work with it, but I don't know. It's like...
Did you hear her scream?
Hey, it's Gotham City. That's practically our theme song.
You didn't think that she was a very decent character, and that was kind of our whole point, was that, yeah, she was kind of just the nagging girlfriend, and I thought that was kind of doing her a disservice.
There's two things that it appealed to me because it was a surprise. That's number one. Number two, all these shows with teenage superheroes, they always have one girlfriend.
Yeah.
And they go through life, the whole series, the whole life, with one girlfriend, one steady. And it's just, I just wanted to break that up.
If he's going to break up with Dana, that's one thing. But to end up with Max on the rebound is wrong, because Max was practically a guy. I mean, I know she was a girl, but she was a real tomboyish. She was his buddy. It's like they didn't have any heat.
They had personal chemistry.
I had a different idea for 10, too.
What was your idea for 10?
When we see the Royal Flush Gang again, she's now queen. So Terry grabs 10, saying, I thought you were going to give this up, and then takes out the mask, and it's not her. That's the way I thought we can escalate the Royal Flush.
Pitch that to
Yeah, I did. And you guys just said, go away.
They don't listen to you, do they?
They don't.
Yeah.
I have the isotope. Batman? He's dead.
That was the problem we had a lot in those shows too, was that we would have like these mystery plots where it's like, okay, you didn't know who the villain was until the end of the show, but you only had, because it's only a 20-minute show, you only have 2 suspects, and it's obviously not going to be the one you're leading the audience to think it is, so it's obviously going to be the other guy.
I don't remember that many mystery plots, though, I'll tell you the truth.
Well, Untouchable was like that, and Payback was like that. You didn't know it was the kid until the end. And Spellbinder was like that too originally. You didn't know that it was the school counselor who was the villain until the end.
Does that kind of come with when you're going to do a quote-unquote Batman show? Does the mystery and detective element, like go into the filing cabinets with the flashlight and break in and do? He did stuff, like there wasn't entire Hardy Boys mysteries or something. But
Terry investigated.
I'm sitting here investigating people who have saved the world more times than I can count. I've considered them heroes my whole life. How can one of them be a traitor? It's impossible.
Is that something, when you're doing those kind of stories, is it because it's Batman that you think or whatever, or is that just the way the story's kind of turned out?
A good mystery story is very hard to write. You have to put in a lot of misdirection and a lot of, red herrings, and you want the audience very satisfied in, the conclusion almost to the end, and then you turn it on its heels, and then you hit them in the face with, whoa, I never saw that coming. And that's a satisfying mystery. And those are hard to write, and they're hard to write in 22 minutes, and they're hard to write visually. A lot of times mysteries work better on the page than they do when you're watching them.
Sure.
Terry was really more of a two-fisted character than somebody who sat down and puzzled through mysteries. He could do it when he had to, but that kind of worked against the premise of the shows.
I've watched him. I've studied him. He's proved his valor. His time has come, Bruce. What do you say?
Well, I don't think it's my decision to make.
The Justice League.
My understanding is, with animated shows and things like that, it's not kind of your typical type of, we're going to end the show, you just keep making them and then you just stop, right? There wasn't ever any, hey, let's do 13 more and kind of wrap it up or anything like that. It was just...
You know, whenever we do any series, you do whatever you're contracted to do, however many episodes it is, and when you get to the end of them, you'll either get picked up or you won't. It's not like prime time shows or anything. If the show's doing well, you know, once you hit the, you know, say 52 episodes, you don't really need to make any more because they can just, you know, syndicate that show till the end of time. 52 episodes, you know, goes a long way. So yeah, we never actually got like an official cancellation notice. You know, we just, you know, eventually just stopped making the show, and we were all moving on to other projects and stuff. So it's just the way it goes.
Was there ever any kind of talk about, as you go through finishing the orders, of thinking, well, maybe we should do some kind of even wrap up for the season and stuff?
We do that now. We didn't do that back then because we didn't think that way. We didn't think, oh yeah, we should do a big season finale or a series finale. Because the last episode we did, Unmasked, it didn't actually even air on Kids WB originally. It was kind of a problem child episode. It kind of had production problems, and by the time the show was actually finished, Kids WB had decided to not air Batman Beyond anymore. So eventually it premiered on Cartoon Network, and there's a lot of anticipation amongst the fans. It's like, oh, the final episode of Batman Beyond is going to be great.
The lost episode.
And it's an average episode. It's a run-of-the-mill episode. It's not like, you know, the big season or series finale. So so because of that, I always make a real point of trying to end each season with a good conclusion.
Was there any thought of trying to go through and resolve some of the other characters other than Bruce and Barbara and whatever? But
we wanted to stay away from that stuff. It's the same way with like the villains.
Yeah.
We thought this was more Terry's show than Bruce's show, and we want to do something that the audience is not expecting rather than just what they're expecting.
Except for having Terry make out with Max.
Right, exactly.
Shall we?
After you.
Batman Beyond sort of marks the end of a certain kind of program that was begun with Batman in '91 of superhero shows on broadcast television that appeal to tweens as well as 6 to 11-year-olds. And that was sort of the end of it.
And that's discouraging because a lot of that is usually for little kids, and it's nice to work on a series of shows that kind of raise the bar a little bit, not only as far as artistic quality, but also, you know, as far as what the audiences will accept. And it was nice to, you know, buck the trend for a while.
This was kind of the end of this kind of collaboration of you four kind of going out on top moment. Everybody kind of went off and did other things.
Went off on his own.
Yeah. Well, nobody would listen to him. I mean, what do you expect the guy to do? Yeah. Everybody kind of spun off into their own things, which is good. But you had a nice run. Of everything looking back at it.
I don't know if I'd want to go back and do the series again, but I like the mythology that we all created, and I'd like to see that, you know, exist in some way. I think it's a very valid, worthy continuation of the Batman mythos.
Thank you guys again. I appreciate it. This is always a treat for me. I get to sit here and listen to some good stories, and we get to tape it for you to watch at home. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Thanks a lot. This is all for Batman Beyond. See ya.